And joining us now, U.S. Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg.
I'm very excited. I'm very excited to see how his week of flying on commercial aircraft is going.
Now stop,
Secretary Pete, thank you so much for being with us. So let me first ask you about the bailouts and the airlines. We taxpayers give them billions and billions of dollars in bailouts. They decide to use that opportunity to push pilots and flight attendants out, all right? We understand, right? Corporations are going to do what corporations do. They're going to try to make money. COVID, once in a 100-year pandemic. We get all of that. My question is, Secretary Pete, what are we doing? What are you doing to make this situation better so people like that woman aren't going to be stranded in airports in September?
Well, that's right. Look, a lot of passengers, including me, right? I'm on an airliner, if not every day, then several times a week, have seen the kind of breakdowns across the system that are incredibly frustrating when we have supported the airlines in order to keep them in business. Now, don't get me wrong. I strongly believe that keeping the airlines in business was the right thing to do, preventing mass layoffs and preventing the actual collapse of the airlines during the worst days of COVID. But they took and accepted a huge amount of taxpayer support. And a lot of us are saying, OK, the American people did our part to keep these planes in the sky. Why is this system, why are these airlines often not prepared to service the tickets that they're selling, that they're collecting revenue on right now? The rules of the bailout said that you couldn't fire anybody, you had to keep people on your payroll. But what they did do was see a lot of pilots into early retirement, and now they don't have enough pilots. And sometimes there are other staffing or crew issues. So there's several things that are going on in my department to hold airlines accountable. We've got a new rule out right now, which one expert described as the largest expansion of passenger rights in decades. It's out for comment. You can go in at regulations.gov or my department's website. That's actually a website, regulations.gov, where the public can weigh in. And I think we're going to get a ton of comments about the passenger experience. We've also got a consumer complaints division. They're getting more complaints coming in than we've ever seen. At one point, it was about triple the normal level. And by the way, you should know that if you have an experience where your flight gets canceled, that happened to me, for example, on Friday, and the airline does not offer you a refund, you can't get a refund, we will enforce the requirement that they do provide you with that refund. We just issued last year the biggest fine in the history of the program from an airline that wasn't doing the right thing. We've got a number of active investigations right now. Look, I would when the right thing to do is to roll up our sleeves and bring the airlines to the table and work with them, I prefer to do that. But we're also going to use our enforcement powers to make sure passengers have a better experience.
Well, let me ask you, Mr. Secretary, have you talked to the CEO of American, of Southwest, of United, of JetBlue, of Delta? I'm looking at this. Yesterday, 399 domestic flights canceled, over 6,000 delayed. Almost 1 in 3 of Americans' flights delayed, 1 in 3 of Southwest flights delayed, 1 in 3 of JetBlue's flights delayed. You know, before the pandemic, I loved JetBlue. Now, I know, there's as much chance of a Boston Red Sox player getting a good hit as there is of my JetBlue flight taking off. It's absolutely, it's awful. And, the thing is, Pete, if I don't make my flight, NBC will figure it out. We got people whose livelihoods depend on getting on those flights, or who have kids, who have minors that they're trying to get back from visiting grandmom, that are stuck in an airport, that missed 3 flights. I have somebody whose 14-year-old had 3 flights canceled on him, and you talk about them having to scramble. And here's the thing, Mr. Secretary, we hear it every day from our friends and from our relatives and from people who aren't as fortunate enough as us to be able to figure out a way, and you, out of the crisis. Like, we need relief. What are these CEOs telling you about what they're going to do?
Yeah, so I've been talking to them a lot, brought them all in after the Memorial Day weekend, which you might remember had an unacceptable level of cancellations and delays. And here's some of the things we talked about. First of all, we talked about realistic schedules, right? You have to make sure that you've got schedules on the books that you can actually serve with the staff that you do have. Don't let somebody get to the airport before you figure out that you never actually had the right means to service that flight. We talked about customer service, right? There are some times where there's severe weather or something that can't be avoided and somebody's canceled or delayed. At least make it easy to get somebody on the phone. And we were seeing examples of people waiting 4, 6, 8 and more hours in order to get to a human being. We talked about the staffing issue and how to make sure that now that's not new. I've been looking at that since we got here, but looking at how the airlines can step up to make sure that they can do that, including the classic way to deal with a shortage of something, which is to pay properly. And since that time, we've seen a number of steps. Saw the regional carriers, for example, making dramatic improvements in pay. I think that is going to make a big difference. We've seen a thinning out of the schedule, but obviously, you look last weekend, and we saw more than 4% of flights canceled. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but if you get anywhere north of 2%, that's enough to really mess with the entire system. And what we're seeing is the system is so brittle right now that while there are fewer what we call blue sky delays, fewer cases where the weather's fine, everything looks fine, and the airlines still can't make it happen. We are seeing that when you get a weather event hitting the system somewhere, the entire system grinds to, I won't say a halt, but it stops working. And that is a consequence of them not being ready, not being prepared. And we need to have a more fluid system because so many of us, in addition to frequent business travel or people trying to get home to see their kids. We also have a lot of pent-up demand. People who haven't taken a trip, that vacation or family reunion in 2 years, they're ready to go. It's a good thing that the demand is back, but the airlines have to be ready to meet that demand.
It's very clear that you understand the problem, but I guess the question for these airlines is there a deadline that you are giving them for peak performance? And if so, when that is? I mean, at what point can American travelers feel like things are going to be back to normal and expect only the normal things, the normal cancellations and delays that you usually have to deal with regular airline travel? When can airlines get back to peak performance? Are you giving them a deadline? And what are the consequences if they don't meet it?
Yeah, so the right time for this to happen, obviously, is yesterday. The number I'm most looking at is the daily cancellation rate and watching that get back below the level that we saw before the pandemic. And I'm saying not at, but actually below what we were seeing before. Now, if an airline, look, the deadlines for some of the things we require of airlines are very quick. For example, the turnaround on a refund, if they can't get you to where you got to go, is a quick one. And if they don't meet that, we will fine them, we will enforce on them. But remember, at the end of the day, these are private businesses that are selling tickets, and then they need to meet the obligations of their customers. So we're going to continue to make sure there's a framework of rules to hold them accountable. They need to step up and service the tickets that they sell.
Mr. Secretary, we have to get through the end of the summer, and then presumably there's going to be a drop-off in demand, and that should ease some of the pressure in the system. People won't be traveling for summer holidays quite so much. But then we'll head into the Thanksgiving holiday, we'll head into the Christmas holiday again. What are going to be the guarantees that the airline industry doesn't just kind of breathe a sigh of relief after this summer crush is over, think, OK, we've got this sorted out, and then the next time America hits another holiday period, because those airline pilots are still being retired, because they haven't replaced the staff and they're not paying enough, we're back in the same boat again?
Well, I think they're finding that the heat is on. They're experiencing pressure from the public. They're experiencing pressure, frankly, from us, from policymakers who are saying what's going on here, and from the press. I do think you're right. We're going to see the demand level out a little bit as we come out of the summer, but then the holidays are just around the corner. And again, so many of us didn't take that trip last year, the year before that, and are ready to go this time. Now, I do think over time that gives the pilot training pipeline a chance to catch up. Obviously, training and qualifying a pilot, getting them safely in the cockpit, not something you can do overnight. And so they need to make sure that they have that pipeline kind of end-to-end ready. And we're looking, I'm going to be continuing to visit facilities and places that train and support people at the earliest part of their career. That's also going to give us a chance to optimize some things with air traffic control that we've been working on at the FAA that can also play a role here. But I do think those winter holidays will be a test, because we will have gotten out of this summer season, and the airlines will have had more time to make those adjustments that they have assured me that they are making right now. And we're going to, and I'll be among the millions of air passengers who will see how they do.
So, Mr. Secretary, let me ask you this about the age limit on pilots. I guess it's 65 right now. We have to look at raising that. We've got presidents. The last two presidents have been in their 70s. We've got a Speaker of the House who is, I think most Democrats think, doing a great job in her 80s. We have Supreme Court justices that go well into their 80s. I mean, maybe 65 is retirement. Back in the 1960s and 70s made sense. It doesn't make sense anymore. Why can't we raise that retirement age from 65 to, say, at least 69?
So here's what I'll say. The job requirements for certain workers, surgeons, pilots, members of the military, are different than the job requirements for other roles. And every rule that we have around pilot qualifications is around safety. I do want to make sure we don't forget something. The number of passenger deaths in airline crashes last year was 0. And the year before that, 0. And the year before that, 0. And we got to remember that that is a big deal. 40,000 people die on our recently, and we do not take that for granted. But 0 crashes resulting in airline deaths. That's not something that just happened. That is something that happens because every day the FAA, my department, and all the professionals in this field work to make sure it is absolutely safe. So in order to be open, and look, we want to be a fact-driven, data-driven administration. We're always interested in ideas. But in order to be open to anything affecting the qualification or readiness of air crews or pilots, we would have to be absolutely confident that there would be no impact on safety. And as of right now, all of these rules related to pilots, I believe, are there for a very good reason.
Secretary Pete, you said that these airlines are private businesses, and that is absolutely true. But I don't necessarily believe that just goodwill is what drives people in big business. What penalties can you say that you're telling airlines that if they don't reach target dates that you discussed, that they will suffer? What is it that the government can do when you have millions of people, as you know, I travel a lot, millions of people being stranded, disrupted, that will not get this summer back? What penalties will an airline say we must get this done by the end of September or the beginning of December, whatever it is? What is the government saying that you will be penalized?
Yeah, you're right. Look, these are private profit-making businesses. They're not going to do some of these things just because, or just because someone asked them nicely. That's why the rules have to have teeth. So there are 3 things that I would point to in terms of what gives us the backing to enforce. First of all, fines, direct fines that are assessed that they will need to pay up, multi-million-dollar fines if they are caught in unfair, deceptive practices or failing to meet their obligations to passengers and consumers. Secondly, being forced to pay the consumers. So it's one thing for them to have to write a check to the Treasury in the form of a fine, but we think is usually the best thing to happen is to make sure that the passenger, the customer, is made right, is made whole. And then the third is, often airlines are asking for consideration in various policy things that are important to them. And to the extent that the law provides for it, we have a responsibility to make sure that's in the public interest. Part of how you can tell if some of these things that the industry wants permission to do might be in the public interest, is to look at how they're treating passengers. Are passengers better off because of what has happened in the airline so far? Are they better off after all these mergers and all this concentration and consolidation that has happened? That's something that we take a very serious look at anytime that they're coming through. And the best data on that, of course, is what happened to prices and what happened to the passenger experience. But yeah, this is not just us, wringing our hands saying, hey, could you please do this or do that better? We are going to back every step that we take with the enforcement power that this department has.
All right. U.S. Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg, thanks very much for coming on this morning. We'll have you back, and we'll be watching. Thank you.